Rahontsiiostha and welcome to ATV Live. Nyawagoa for joining us. I'm your host, Regan Jacobs, and today we'll be speaking with Philip and Thomas Barreiro, aka the Barreiro Brothers, about capturing another title. This time it is the 2019 Canadian National Championships in Greco Roman Wrestling. So welcome to studio, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
So congratulations on your recent win. How are you feeling? I love how you're just like,
Yeah, well,
yes.
this is my fourth time winning this particular tournament, you know, so it's something I'm used to winning. I've won it every year now since 2017. So
Fantastic. So you're like,
just trying
another one in the bag.
Well, I mean, there's good competition there, you know, like none of those guys are to be taken lightly, you know. It's anytime you step on the mat, you can lose. So, just trying to look forward to the next one.
So how are you feeling?
Well, this is also this will be my third championship. Really, we're kind of more looking, it's a good feeling to win. Just another step in the progression of hopefully trying to make an Olympic team in 2020.
So tell me about this match. I mean, it's the 2019 championship title, like we just mentioned, but what makes it prestigious, if it is, and tell me a little bit, like give me a little bit of details.
Well, it's the national championship for all of Canada, so it'd be all of the wrestlers within Canada in whatever specific weight class we're speaking about. It also qualifies whomever wins the championship to be the world team member. So my brother and I are the world team members for Canada for 2019. So we'll be competing.
That's fantastic.
So we'll be competing in a few weeks in the Pan American Championships in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and then in September we will be competing in the World Championships in Astana, Kazakhstan.
I'm not sure how to pronounce that either, but it's in Kazakhstan, yeah.
Kazakhstan, okay.
And then it also, we're also the number one. We will now be the number one seeds going into the 2020 Olympic trials, which will be in December.
Yeah, so the way that works is they have like a challenge tournament. So they have a ladder system in Canada. So there's like a challenge tournament that anybody who didn't place at the nationals goes into. And they pick a fourth person out of that. The winner is the fourth place. They wrestle the third place wrestles the second place. The winner of that wrestles the number one. And they got to win 2 out of 3 matches to be on the Canadian Olympic team. So essentially right now, because of our win this past weekend, it's kind of like, in a video game where there's like an end boss, So right now we're the end bosses waiting to be challenged at the Canadian Olympic trials in December.
Wow.
So it's very nice to win that way.
Right, and I mean, this is a huge deal. And when you're going to these types of tournaments, when you look at the level of Indigenous representation, are you guys the only First Nations that are participating at this level, or do you run into other people that?
I mean, Kahnawake has had a history of guys who are excellent at the sport, as well as what's the name? Tanya Hedican?
Tara Hedican.
Tara Hedican. Yeah.
She was a few-time national champion in women's wrestling back in 2000 or late 90s.
Okay.
But currently, at the moment, there's not a large amount of Native wrestlers who are competing at that level.
Right.
Yeah, it's mostly us and Nolan. So
That's
yeah,
right.
Nolan's been a junior champion and junior Pan American champion. So he's also quite a good wrestler.
He hasn't been wrestling on the freestyle or Greco Roman circuit because he's been doing his Division I college.
Okay.
So he's been not competing there currently, but maybe
He's been on that level as well. Yes.
He's been on that level though.
So tell me, what goes through your mind when you're in the midst of a match? Do you think like I'm gonna execute on my strategy in terms of technique, or you just go for like that adrenaline rush of when you're in that match?
Well, there's like a dichotomy there, because, and anyone who's been an athlete in any sport will tell you, you don't want to be thinking too much. obviously you've prepared your technique and you've prepared a strategy and you know what you're good at and what positions to avoid. You know, so but you have to have practiced that enough such that when you go, it's kind of an automatic thing. And you know, you learn as you get more experience how to manage a match, and you know, if you're winning, how to hold the lead, and you know, not take unnecessary risks, you know, not open yourself up unnecessarily, and you know, how to find those little edges if you can, you know. So you know, there's a mix of it, but mostly it's all you got to be able to just let your body do the work.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll go into a match with a strategy. You know, sometimes there's different people who do different things. You know, Thomas and I are quite short for our weight classes, so there's certain moves in which we don't really like. I don't really do because of the fact that they don't work so well against opponents who are, you know, significantly taller than I am.
Okay.
But you know, that really depends on, you know, the athlete you're wrestling, and generally it's you try and go out with a very similar game plan most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're preparing and then you're trying to execute that in your match, but without overthinking it.
Yeah, it's about consistency, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to go into each match with a consistent game plan that you've already prepared, and if you have to change it, you only change it so much. You know, you don't rewrite the wheel or rewrite the whole script for
Right.
you know, just for one person.
Yeah. Do you guys have a signature move? Is there something that you work on and?
Well, I do a lot of this. It's like an arm drag, but it's instead of with my hands, I do it with my head. So it's like it's a little hard to explain in words.
Well, the common term for it is an outside duck under or a head in the hole. So when you're wrestling somebody, right, and especially in Greco, the primary defense is the hands, right? So in order to get through the hands, you have to go either under the hands or on the outside of the hands. So what Phil will do is he'll get like a 2-on-1 or some other tie, and then when the opponent reaches, whether they do it their own mistake or Phil creates the opportunity, he'll duck his head into here, force him through, and then just push him get behind, you know? So
that's generally what
I
my
won't ask
go-to
you to
move
demonstrate.
yeah, so we do a lot of stuff going underneath the opponent because both of us are quite short for our weight class. So level change is fairly, you know, fairly good tactic for us.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, when you're preparing for the next competition, because, you know, off camera we were just able to discuss, you know, having that win, and then you have a couple of days where you're laissez-faire about, you know, your diet and training. It's probably not long, as you mentioned. But then what? Like, what is your lead up to a competition in terms of your training and dieting? It's all part and parcel, I'm assuming.
Well, it really depends on the competition, you know, because you could, but we don't peak for every competition, you know. Like, we did our best to peak for the Nationals because it's an important tournament to qualify for. And then, so we have a 3-week turnaround now to compete in Buenos Aires. So we're just going to keep working on our technique and, you know, keep our physical conditioning where it is and just make sure we make weight, get there. But when it comes time to prepare for a competition, we're at the senior level, so there's, you know, we're not competing every weekend. We're competing like every month, every 2, maybe 3 months. Sometimes as long as like 6 months, depending on our funding and what we're doing in our training cycle. But you'll set out like 4 to 8 week blocks of focusing on specific techniques, focusing on specific physical capacities, you know. So maybe for 8 weeks, we're just working on just our maximum strength, you know, and we're working on that, but always working on the technique as well, because you can't ever put that aside.
So I mean, the tournament finished on Sunday. We haven't trained at all since then. We will start training again lightly tonight, and then lightly going through the weekend, and then next week starts back up into the normal amount of training, and we'll be doing that up through the Pan American Championships, which will be, he'll be wrestling on the 18th of April, and I'll be wrestling on the 19th of April. And then after that, we'll take about a week of no training or very, very, very light training. And then after that, it's back to the normal grind until well, we're
until your next
until our next
competition.
competition. The only competition after that that we're certain we'll be going to is the World Championships, which is in Kazakhstan.
And that's not
Right.
until September.
Not until
Right.
September.
So,
I think you guys have already been fundraising for that too, right?
well, what we've been fundraising for, because these things cost, as many people know, we don't get a lot of funding from Canada itself. Canada doesn't really have the money to support men's wrestling as much as the women's. The women's team, and granted, the women's team has had like Olympic champions the last few cycles, so
Right.
They've had the success to earn.
They've had the
what they've-
success to
what
earn
they're-
that.
what they're getting.
So a lot of what we do is self-funded or fundraised. So, we spend essentially like my entire paycheck goes to us. Like we live off his paycheck, and then my paycheck goes to training, right?
That's passion.
You know?
That's
Yeah,
a lot
so-
of athletes who are funding their way up or try to have to find sponsorships and.
Yeah. And then we're very fortunate that we live in a community and we have family members who are, passionate about seeing others in the community succeed, So
Yeah.
we have done some fundraising. The fundraising that we did recently will get us through the Pan American Championships for sure.
Okay.
And then we're going to have to continue to fundraise so that we can go to Worlds and the Olympic trials and onward. We'd like to do some other tournaments and training camps leading up to that, including a Grand Prix Spain, Grand Prix Germany, other tournaments in Europe, particularly because the Europeans are probably the best as a continent at Greco Roman.
Oh,
And,
really?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's Greco Roman,
It's in the name.
in the name.
In the name.
Right. Okay.
So they're
He's
quite
like, I'm gonna point that out.
they're quite talented, and especially in the parterre, the groundwork, because outside of Cuba, like Cuba's also quite excellent in the sport. Outside of Cuba, the Americas aren't quite as developed in the parterre as the Europeans are. So we would like to go out there and continue to develop that way as well.
Right, yeah. And obviously all of this costs money and a lot, of preparation. So when you look at, all of these elements, what do you think your career looks like long term?
Well, there's not a lot of money to be made in wrestling. It's not something that we do with the idea that somehow this is going to be, a career. We have our own jobs. I work at the Tribal Court. He works at the Boys and Girls Club. So
Right.
there's no plans to do anything.
Yeah, we're not going to go into WWE or anything like that.
Do you think you'll go to the Olympics? Is that something that you
That's
want
the
to do?
that's the goal. We're going to be attempting for 2020. We will also be attempting for 2024. After that, it's a question of whether it's worth trying anymore at that point.
By that point, we'll be about 33, 34, and at that point, it's like, it's not like going to the NBA where you can make a real living at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So at that point, we might just start coaching more. We've coached a few people around here. We've worked primarily with Nolan Torrance, and that was a real good experience. So, maybe we can get more youth in Akwesasne to start wrestling.
Right, I mean-
Kahnawake has had good success with wrestling, and
Yeah.
our cousin Pete Montour was the head coach for quite a while there.
Right, at
So-
Kahnawake Survival School.
And the late Dave Canadian, he was quite an amazing
Yes,
coach. He was
yeah.
very instrumental in getting us on our path. So we'd like to be able to do that for kids here in Akwesasne as well. We've
Right.
tried to dabble in that a little bit here and there. We've done some stuff at the Boys and Girls Club. We brought in our coach's daughter, Dory Yates. She was 5th at Rio in the Olympics. She's retired from wrestling now, but she's an Olympian. I brought her in twice to the Boys and Girls Club to do wrestling with the kids. So I'd like to, create kind of a youth program in the
Right.
community.
That sounds like a fantastic idea. And I'm sure that, you'll be able to get it up and running, no doubt. Well, thank you guys for coming in studio, and congratulations on your win. Is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye to our audience?
Again, I'd just like to thank everybody who's supporting us and who's wishing us well on our attempt at this. This isn't an easy thing to do, and Every little support we get helps, whether it's from community members, just well-wishers, or from various organizations that support us. We've gotten support in the past from the Convenience Store Association, from Dreamcatcher Charitable Foundation in Ontario. You know, so a lot of those people who have helped us in the past and continue to help us, you know, every little bit goes a long way. And it's, you know, sometimes it's like a very lonely thing, you know, like, granted, I'm lucky enough to have my twin brother with me the whole time, you know, but it gets lonely, you know, training on your own in that way. So it's nice when, you know, if you starting to doubt yourself a little bit, to have people in the community and around you that, you know, say, hey, we believe in you.
It really means a lot that, you know, to feel that people care, you know.
So where can people donate if they wanted to, you know, they see the show today, maybe they want to donate, where can they find you?
Well, we don't have anything currently set up yet, but we do have a Facebook page, Barreiro Brothers Wrestling.
Right.
We'll be having stuff on there shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can hit you up on Facebook.
Yes, essentially.
So the Barreiro Brothers Wrestling Facebook page. Well, Nyawagoa, you guys for coming in studio today. I know you're both busy, so I appreciate you know, you giving ATV some time, and it's been a pleasure. And good luck in the next couple of weeks as you lead into your next competition.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And Nyawagoa for staying with us, to our viewers, and we'll see you again real soon. I'm Regan Jacobs. Onikiwahi.